Art is a diverse range of cultural activity centered around works utilizing creative or imaginative talents which are expected to evoke a worthwhile experience, generally through an expression of emotional power, conceptual ideas, technical proficiency, or beauty. Art. Art is the very mechanism that lets us humans be as humans. By means of channeling, taming the wild neurotic impulse, we rose from mere Philistines to gods of our own machinations. Boudides, Gukaiji, Da Vinci, Rembrandt, all proctors of the mechanism we truly conscious beings call art. I decided to make a Rainworld region in a week. I'm not really sure what prompted me to do so, perhaps I thought it would just be fun, so here we are. I guess it is the spiritual successor to Lost Cranny. Now this isn't like a challenge video where I force myself to make a region for 150 hours straight, it's more of a casual experiment. I did have some specifications for what the region should be, but more on those later. The region will be for my in-development mod project, so sadly I can't upload this region to the workshop instantly like I did with Lost Cranny. I will give myself 1 week to make all of the rooms for the region, but unlike Lost Cranny, the rooms should meet my quality standards. This means I can't just make a bunch of rooms with very little effort. I want to be satisfied with each room, and it should be a solid region that can be appreciated by itself without the whole 1 week gimmick being all it's known for. With all the boring introductions out of the way, let's get into how I made a region in 1 week. On the weekend before the 23rd of February, which was my starting date, I set out to design 4 potential concepts for what the region will actually be and look like. Each of them needed to comply with 3 principles or specifications that the region had to have. First of these specifications is that the region must be early game and insignificant. An often overlooked part of Rainworld is the gradual increase of each region's in-world significance based on the order the intended playthrough would visit them in. Outskirts by name is an insignificant region. It's on the edge of a more important area, eclipsed in what little purpose it serves. Drainage system is vague, with the playable region likely being a small slice of what is a very common and mass-produced infrastructure to deal with the severe rainfall. Both of these contrast with Farm Arrays, a core production site for the nearest Iterator city, or Sky Islands, which is a large installation built solely for long-distance communication. Since the region would be an early game one that the player could reach in 2 to 3 gates, I would like it to have little significance. I want my mod as a whole to broadly follow that passive increase of world building that I really like in vanilla. The second principle is the region must be small. I set myself a limit of 60 to 80 screens, which is about the size of Industrial Complex. I should be able to feasibly do it in a week, but that small size ties into the idea of being unimportant. I have worked on many regions over the years and eons of my lucrative modding career, and I have realized that trying to keep regions small is a nice way to keep the player engaged as well as yourself, as you won't get burned out making the damn thing. An extension of this principle is that the rooms produced for the region must be pretty quick to make. If each screen took like 12 hours to make, I would not be finishing this region without looking like this guy. The final principle is that the region is optional. Just like Sky Islands or Drainage System, it could be skipped or missed entirely with no issues. I know there are more technically optional regions in the game, but in terms of a first playthrough, players aren't likely to skip Shoreline or Pebbles over accidentally skipping something like Drainage System. My dream is to have many of these sort of optional regions where player exploration is rewarded by finding them, but on the flip side, more straightforward players could miss them without much consequence. Some lesser principles that any region should strive to have. Visual identity. The region should be distinct from existing regions, not only from the base game but other projects too. This is to keep it interesting and distinct. Inspirations. The region will benefit from taking inspiration from other media, which can help in deciding how to make certain rooms, region layout, tiles to use, etc. Gameplay. Obviously the region should be fun. It is a game after all. The region should be fun to navigate, explore, and go through on repeat playthroughs and visits. These principles are not always followed, but are definitely worth trying to follow in most cases. Moving forward, all of these principles are going to be important while coming up with and ultimately deciding which of the concepts to use. When it comes to making any region, having a solid foundation of what a region even looks like or feels like is very important. Many modders, including myself, make what is called a style test room or two in order to gauge what the typical room of the region looks like. So without further ado, let's look at each of the concepts I came up with for the region and their style tests. Countless fins of concrete perforate the very ground. Each vector formed into hilltops and vales through boundless celebrants. These formations were not spurred out of benevolence, more so necessity. The looming clouds will grow heavy and weep into the lands below. These stone floodplains were made as to embrace the downpour wholly as their sworn duty. Yeah, I did write a pretentious introductory description for all of the concepts. It's sort of a theme in this video. So the floodplains would be a pretty simple region, with most of the playable area taking place on the surface, made up of concrete peaks and valleys. The region would be very slope heavy in its geometry, with most outside rooms being diagonal in design. Lots of the rooms would contain pools of water runoff from previous cycles too, adding some water gameplay. I think the region would have a pretty solid visual identity, being distinctly diagonal, while being pretty insignificant with its placement in the greater world. After all, it's just some concrete with maybe some pipes here and there. The inspirations for this concept is the iconic LA River being this awesome concrete pipe, which is kind of amusing to me, as I don't think that counts as a proper river. Also the Airframe Ultramap Storm Drain, which is likely inspired by the LA River. The concept is a bit saturated, as a couple of regions have already attempted an overground drainage system design, like the left side of Pillar Grove or the drainage canal region from the Underpass mod, but I think the focus on slope geometry is enough to set my concept apart, which leads me into the second issue with the concept. Creature AI does not like diagonal geometry very much. Now I don't know the extent of the code issues with the slope tiles, but I think a lot of AI pathing code does not account for non-square solid tiles very well. This would be tested if I go through with this concept, but it's pretty concerning nonetheless. The final big potential issue is diagonal surface interactions with water. Since rainfall is meant to flow down the slopes, something it currently doesn't do in the base rain world, I would have to make some diagonal water flow shenanigans, which sounds like a massive pain, and will most definitely be above my programming skill level. Overall, the core concepts for the floodplain sound great on paper, but has some glaring issues if I were to use this concept and develop the idea further. The air compresses, it coils itself, compounding into alloys much denser and opaque against the common surface smog. At the far reaches of the small vista within the mist stands a dozen or so solemn cylindrical towers. The metal structures loom above the formless white, absolute within the unfurling mist. These towers were not impeded by the shrouding tide, rather nourished by it. The mistlands hold many mysteries, the very atmosphere rife with unending, unseen conflict, rolling fog pushing against metal organs of mechanized exchange. Which side will eventually consume the other? The Mistlands will be a very misty region, unsurprisingly, with a unique custom mechanic where either creatures or the level itself would be obscured by fog. This means you couldn't see the whole screen, so like, a lizard could sneak up on you or something. The region would have some really cool gameplay, I think, especially if new creatures and items are built around this core shrouding mechanic. I can already think of a handful which could be really awesome to make. My main issue with this concept is that having a whole new gimmick for a region kind of makes that region significant, and definitely not optional by having such a standout feature. If a player missed this region, they would skip a whole bunch of cool stuff which wouldn't feel right. A concept like this should be nearer to the end of the game, where a whole region gimmick would keep things fresh rather than the second or third region, where the players are slowly getting acclimatized to the world. The very ground has consumed this place. Spires reduced into poles, roofs into floors, and statues dragged downwards into unmarked graves. Were the foundations not built to hold, or was it ever maintained? What purpose did this place serve? Where did everyone go? The answers to the above questions have been lost underneath, buried next to the original name of the sunken village. This is probably the simplest concept, just some urban or industrial site half sunk into the ground, but I feel it's the most insignificant region out of the concepts. It may not have the strongest visual identity, but the setting has some nice world building potential. The concept is inspired by the sort of random unnamed derelict settlements you often find in open world fantasy games like The Witcher 3 or Elden Ring. They may not be notable in the slightest, with maybe a couple items or enemies plopped about them, but I can appreciate them in their simple visual storytelling. A humble little hovel once stood here, but now it's no more. That core theme of dereliction is present in all of the Rainworld vanilla regions. The biggest issue I see with this particular concept is that villagers don't really fit into the hyper-industrialized setting of Rainworld. Translating that core feeling of derelict village into the Rainworld style would definitely be a challenge. After the final great rapture, a plot of land was left empty. An overlooked gap in between sprawls of buildings and twisting alleyways. Time itself became the new foreman of the forgotten site. Nature broke free of the concrete cages that restrained it everywhere else in the local districts. Cycles upon cycles slipped by, leaving the land an unkempt jungle. Cacophonies of titanic root constructs, organisms nearing their heritage, and embedded fungal masses all rang out to the surrounding silence. The site became a colourful and chaotic carnival of flora and fauna, with outsiders beginning to traverse the overgrown path to witness the unshackled symphony of nature. Overgrown Path is a frankly oversaturated and hard to execute idea for a region. I think most if not all modders want to do a plant heavy region when they start off, but they are notoriously hard to make and harder to make well. This is mainly due to readability, as obscuring layer 1 is a great way to make the game frustrating, not to mention all the visual noise added by the colourful plants, which can make levels look bad or confusing. So why would I put this concept forward? I believe there is still potential for a plant region. I attempted to make one of these planty regions for this mod about a year back, but didn't get very far as I wasn't really satisfied with the rooms and also got a bit too ambitious with what custom stuff I wanted to add to the region. As a result of this attempt, I do have some custom creatures and variants I can carry over to this concept, but they all have little progress done on them. This concept also mirrors Lost Cranny, which if I remember correctly, the theme for that was outskirts but overgrown. It all comes full circle. Now that I made rooms for all of the concepts and gave each one thought, I came to the conclusion that one of them is best suited for this 1 week time frame and the principles I set. Concept 3, the Sunken Village. By no means are the other concepts bad or impossible to add, it's just that concept 3 fits the criteria the best. I may return to the unused concepts later down the line if people like them. With the final concept now chosen on a starry Sunday night, I went to bed in my comical nightcap and dreamed up room layouts and other wistful ideas for the region. The first thing I did when starting out was to make what is called a block map. These are commonly used by modders to get the general layout of the region down before the work begins. They're pretty useful for keeping a structure to the region, or just in remembering what rooms you actually need to make. So I recommend their usage, plus they're very easy to make. I use draw.io for this specific block map, but Microsoft Paint also works well. For each day I'll be making 1/7 of the region, which means I should aim for 12 screens per day. That by all means is not an easy undertaking. I worked on this block map in portions, with this being the day 1 layout. My goal for this particular part of the block map is to introduce players to the region, as they will likely visit from the leftmost gate first. A shelter is included in the vicinity of the gate, so players know where to save once they find food. Shelters have to be easy to find in order to prevent frustration, especially near a gate, as players could lose a painful amount of progress from dying before saving. After the shelter, the routes open up, with OD01 acting as a hub to the paths through the rest of the region, and IB01 being an alternate path to the hub. If you're curious about the room names, I used a simple naming system. Each room is noted with an I for inside or an O for outside. Next, alphabetical characters corresponding to the screen count is added, plus a 2-digit number to separate rooms of the same type. For example, OB03 is an outside room made of 2 screens and is the 3rd of its kind. XX is the acronym for the region itself, which has to be claimed on the lease to prevent conflicts with other mods and DLC content. It was initially for the jungle region I mentioned in Concept 4. I recycled the old acronym as to not hog more acronyms on the lease than needed. The region will connect to 3 other regions via gates that I'll not be making during this week, as the fact that the regions on the other side of those gates are not done yet. I'll connect them up once they're done. So skipping the gate, I started with OC01, being the first room found when leaving the leftmost gate. OC01 is a bridge room, mirroring those grand bridges in Shaded Citadel. Alas, this bridge was not funded by the tax-exempt religious coffers of the True Anointed Citadel, so it's very shoddily constructed. I'll not go over all choices I made for all of the rooms for this region, since it would make the video 6 hours long and be incredibly boring to watch. I'll just go over the main aspects and ordeals of each room. For OC01, I wanted to introduce core themes of the region, as this is the first room most players will see. I'll explain these themes now. The first core theme of the region is that the infrastructure and buildings were cheaply and quickly constructed. The bridge in this room is much thinner in its deck and columns than the ones in the Citadel to give that cheap feel. I also purposefully made the spaces between the columns unequal too. Imp smiling emoji. The bridge is severely damaged, another core theme of the region. Did the shoddy construction of the bridge cause degradation, or was the damage caused by entities more sinister? Either way, the result of the damage is the final core theme, large trash piles. I love putting trash piles in any room I make, but with this region's heavy damage, those small piles become big heaps. A neat little thing is the totem-like constructs at the back of the bridge, which could have acted like messages, wards, or novel art pieces to travellers and traders entering or exiting this area. I thought they were pretty cool. Once I finished making the room, I used Drizzle to render the room very fast. I'd recommend Drizzle as it drastically speeds up room rendering. I am a boomer and still use the community editor though, and most new level editing programs have Drizzle built in. As you can see, the room has no palette, and a couple mistakes that need to be fixed in a new render. I didn't record time lapses outside of the first passes of each room, so if you see a difference in the final room from what I did in the time lapse, that is why. Ah, much better. I also made a custom palette for the region, which is an altered one from the concept room. IA01 is the first interior room located in a large, mostly upright tower on the edge of the village. I actually loosely based the geometry of this one off a windmill interior, as a large machine is situated in the middle of the room. Cracks in the ceiling are present in the room to show the instability and damage inside the buildings of the region. OB01 is the bump region of the sunken village. What this means is that the title card will appear in this room rather than the ones before it. My vision behind this is that the player will emerge from the mill tower, the last stable structure before descending into the sunken pit of the titular village. I used a lot of prop tiles here to show the instability of the ground, and you can see a totem gizmo from the bridge room amongst the rubble, which I added to show that the rooms are very close geographically. In the middle of the room is the small ruin, which is a common sight throughout the rest of the region. I made it so continuing right past the ruin is impossible without advanced movement or a spear in order to subliminally influence players into going below and finding the shelter area. Yeah, I've read 50 social manipulation books, deal with it. Jokes aside, having paths through the region be slightly harder is a great way of guiding the players without taking away their freedom. The right side of the room features more ruins with archways. I've noticed that a lot of real life ruins seem to have archways intact, plus they look really cool, so I use custom arch tiles throughout the whole region. IA02 is the interior of the ruin from the previous room, half submerged in the ground. I designed this room as if it were part of a house, complete with a doorway, and I was gonna have a window, but I replaced that with lots of fans instead. Rainworld's level art design has many unspoken rules, one of which is keeping the purpose of the rooms and their contents vague. Doing so helps the idea that this is an alien world full of wacky and whimsical things. This is not a hard rule that must be enforced or anything, I just personally thought a window here would be too interpretable, so I replaced it with a big wall of fan units instead. This is one of my favourite rooms that I made. I think it captures the vision I wanted nicely, especially for an interior room. S01 is the first shelter of the region. A fun fact about shelters is that Safari mode actually breaks if there's not one specifically called S01. This has probably been fixed or patched by now, but just in case it hasn't, this shelter doesn't follow the naming scheme like the rest of the rooms. I continued using this different naming scheme for all of the shelters, so I can quickly tell them apart from normal rooms though. Shelter rooms aren't really worth mentioning again since they're really quick to make and are purposely not very interesting. IB01 is meant to be a sort of maintenance area. It was inspired by those centipede rooms in Industrial Complex, plus some strange outskirts machinery for whatever purpose. I think it guarantees spear spawns in this room, so players could return to the surface to progress further or continue onwards below the earth. I started day 2 by finishing OD01, which was meant to be done on the first day. This room took a lot of planning to make. 2x2 rooms aren't really common in the base game, and I can see why, they're really annoying to make. OD01 was the first major setback for the region because of its layout. Each screen had to be coordinated in a way that makes them not awkward to move between, and not allowing the point they all intersect to be reached by the player. This is done so the camera doesn't switch between 3 different screens in quick succession. For the room itself, I decided I wanted to make a church-like structure, with a shoddy bridge up above. The church would be on the back layers, with the playable geometry as the climbable structure supports. Now, this building is not actually a church in-game. It could be religious in some way, but I see it more as a notable building in the village. Since this is a pretty long time-lapse, I'll mention now that the village moniker is impossible to give for my interpretation of Sunken Village. I went for a more sparse urban or suburban theme while making the region. Villages in the real world are always a handful of rural houses, and rural can't really be achieved in Rainworld. To explain further, an unspoken rule of Rainworld level art design is the artificial, anti-natural design in the majority of any given region's terrain. 95% of the vanilla game takes place on concrete and metal floors, all built by the industrious hands of the benefactors. Even most of Farmaray's, the farmland region, has concrete and metal floors that make up a good chunk of its open field rooms. The only time this is fully broken is by Subterranean, the final region of the game, done intentionally to show that the benefactors and their influence will eventually break down into the soil. Even though the Sunken Village has some natural terrain between its buildings, the majority of the region still needs to follow the rule. I saw Sunken Village situated more as a sloppy annex to the existing urban sprawl, rather than a cute cottage-core hamlet that would require natural or rural terrain. So intrinsically, village is not really the right term for the region's name, if it's so artificial. Plus, if each room in the region is a building or part of a building, even if this region was surrounded by natural ground, it would be more like a town or a city. So that leaves the question, what should this region actually be called? I don't really know. I'm very particular about region names, as you can tell, so it will take me a while to come up with a name I'm satisfied with. For consistency, I'll still call this region the Sunken Village through the rest of the video. Consider it a codename of sorts. Back to the room itself, I had this fun idea that the bridge I made for the first room, OC01, would have a path through the region, reaching the top of this current room. Obviously, the vast majority of the bridge has since collapsed, but I think it's a neat bit of continuity through the region and raises questions about how built up the region was before it was ruined. After completing OD01, I expanded the block map for day 2. Most of these new additions were planned to form a few loops of rooms through the region. Loops are done in most region layouts to break linearity. Loops are made by having a handful of rooms connected in a way that eventually joins back on themselves. 2 routes can be taken traversing this loop, clockwise and counterclockwise. So when chaining multiple loops together, branching paths of many different routes through the region form, creating non-linear traversal for a much more interesting exploration. Next, I set up the in-game map for Sunken Village. It is a finicky process, but it is very useful to oversee the rooms you have made and how they connect in the region, plus how creatures move through the rooms while abstracted. Returning to making rooms, I made IA03, a part of the region's sewer system, a contender for one of the most unnoteworthy rooms. IB03 was next. Room numbers may not be in chronological order from now on as the block map develops. I do get around to doing the numbers I temporarily skip. This is a vertical 2-screen room that I wanted a big prop pipe to be in. By using freeform props that lack collision with the invisible material combined with solid geometry, level editors can create the illusion of props having collision. This is a trial and error process, but it's worth the effort. Also, the first pass of this room may be really mad for some reason, but I like the room now. IB02 is the brother to IB03, being an inside horizontal 2-screen room. The floor of the corridor has almost completely given away with only a few platforms hanging on. By parkouring across the platforms, players will reach a swarm of yummy batflies, but the jumps are pretty tough. The dimensions of the room are big in scale to show that this was once an important building of some kind. It even has windows to look out of, such commodity. The little signs by the top entrances can be directions for lost benefactors, at least that is my author's interpretation. Wednesday started with me making OA01, the swarm room mentioned before. This room is pretty simple, being a one-screener on the broken bridge, but I'm quite fond of it. I don't think I'm the best at making swarm rooms. Getting batflies to do what you intend and making the gameplay around catching them is deceptively hard. Plus the batflies tend to roam around outside of the swarm room, which causes even more chaos. These little guys are my swarm enemy. Now, some observant people may have noticed a new guy territory note on the Day 2 block map. This is for a new variant I want to make for this region, the Fathom Lizard. The core idea behind this new variant is to create a dangerous lizard that should be avoided rather than fought. Sometimes it's easier to slime a lizard instead of running away. Experienced players may get too comfortable in shredding the lizard population without much challenge. The only dangerous lizard at this degree is the loathsome red lizard, needing a setup or very good skill to take out. This new Fathom Lizard is meant to sort of bridge the gap between standard lizard and reds, being very dangerous but easier to dispatch than reds. I added them into the game as a simple template for now. Sadly, I can't show a time-lapse of the coding process, because it will probably leak other aspects of the mod, and it also would be incredibly boring to watch. After adding them to the game via Fizzobs, they are currently just a pink lizard with the ability to spit at the moment. They'll get a new ranged attack that would utilise the existing spit code to execute. For now, I return to making rooms. IA04 is another small, unremarkable room. Rooms like this are often called filler rooms. They serve to add more structure to the region and pad them out in needed places. This room is derived from IB01, that pipe room near the start of the region. I like to take aspects like these from previous rooms to form common patterns in the design, although innovating is just as important. OE01 was next. Like Outer Expanse, an absolute titan of a room. It is 5 screens long, which I kind of regret committing to. I should have gone with a 3 screen connected to a 2 screen. The idea behind this room is that it was 2 open spaces with the building acting as a partition between them, but the building has since collapsed, leaving a singular large space, with a notable ruin in the centre. I added many of these stone head statues to the room and some large pillars. I needed to build these wonders for religious victory. The pillars were intended to have statues attached to them, but I scrapped that idea very quickly since I don't have the time nor skill to actually make the statues, so the pillars were just left bare. I'll mention Sunken Village's flora here, since this is another long time lapse. Every region has a handful of consistent level editor plants that are used in many of the rooms. For example, Garbage Wastes uses arm growers and fungus trees as its main plants. Sunken Village uses rollers from the based software, and fuzzy growers from the community editor added by Nautilo. I also use rain moss as a sort of primer plant. These primer plants are good for adding nice easy detail to the floors of rooms without needing to be managed like the bigger plants do. Speaking of, they should really rename the roller plant to the troller, because this plant is really unpredictable. It seems to generate in a very weird way, leading to obtrusive stalks spawning. It also has a crazy ability to generate between the room layers that, to my knowledge, I don't think any other plant can do, making them even more chaotic. Many of the re-renders for this region were done because of these trollers, but when they behave they look awesome. I don't really like this room, so I may remake it in the future. The pillars were also too large, so I knocked them down. Don't make a joke. IC02 is a much larger component of the sewer system from IA03, being inspired by those big shoreline columns. The top of the pipe is completely blocked off by rubble, as this room is directly below the full ruined building we see in OE01. I wish this room was a little more damaged in the middle and less blocky at the top, so I'll fix it up later like the previous room. The sun rose metaphorically on me finishing the Day 4 block map. These rooms are meant to be the middle point of the region logistically and layout wise. The initial plan was to update the block map each day and finish the new rooms listed on that day, but that proved unsustainable, so the block map will be updated when most of the current rooms are done. If you recall the start of Day 1, I said I needed to make 12 screens a day. Each each day I'll be making 1/7 of the region, which means I should aim for 12 screens per day. That by all means is not an easy undertaking. Okay, we didn't need a flashback. Future Balagaga is a stupid fucking idiot. Fuck you. I actually don't remember saying that. That is weird. With the 12 screens per day, I should be looking at 36 screens going into day 4, but I only have 29, so I'm about 19% behind schedule. Keep this in mind so I don't have to do another flashback. Room making began with OA02, a small outside ruin. This room features many styles from around the existing region like prop pipes, wobbly shortcuts and support structure tiles. OA02 is another one of my favourites because it represents the whole sunken village well, although the composition of the room is not great. IB05 is a funny room as it was not actually on the block map. It does get added to the later block maps, but it's not in the current one. It was meant to be IA06, but I decided to extend it downwards by 1 screen. The reason for this addition is honestly a big nothing burger, but the cliff notes are that the connection between OA02 and IA06 would be too awkward. The room itself is pretty neat. The lower screen is a crack in the floor leading up to a humble storage room with outskirts pipe drums on an unstable floor. OA03 started out as a death pit room, but I knew death pits don't really fit the region too well, so I did the next best thing and filled the pit with trash and debris. The outcrop I made for the geometry of this room started to look like a weird head and mouth, unintentionally becoming similar to the iconic Outskirts lizard room, where the middle structure looks like a lizard. I rolled with my weird head and borrowed some tiling from the Outskirts room. I definitely based the sinister wall creature around a whale. You can notice a significant amount of Outskirts inspiration in the region, and that was because I strived to capture the same sort of vague urban-y tiling Outskirts had by referencing it. Lore-wise, this region would be built in the same era as Outskirts with the same construction technologies, hence why they are similar. The room has some really mean platforming that will definitely be reworked in the future, but I think it's another good room altogether. S02 connects to Da Whale and is a shelter. OB02 is one of the few rooms to break free from the region style. I purposefully used concrete instead of chaotic stone as its default material, and primarily used machinery tiles and layouts not employed elsewhere in the sunken village. The structure is also fully intact, with the core gameplay taking place suspended high above the floor on little individual platforms, unconventional in other village rooms. I did this to give the room a unique identity by contrasting it with the rest of the region. It is situated in the middle of the combined rooms, so it can be a noteworthy place of interest to serve as a metaphorical mile marker. In the lore, this strange fixture was likely installed at a later time for a special purpose. I quite liked how this room turned out. I did consider making it into a scavenger toll room, but the room was too easy to path around to really justify. I decided to make a scav toll further to the right, so I kept that in mind for future block maps. OB02 was made into a swarm room instead, with platforming and hives across the upper supports. I don't really know if this is great gameplay as it's sort of a linear parkour challenge, with batflies accessible just by moving through the intended path of the room, rather than being off the beaten path for players to hunt. Like I said, I'm not great with batfly rooms. I may have to revisit the gameplay of this room in the future. After making all of today's rooms, the region making process took a dark turn. The Fathom lizards I began to code yesterday were decided by the shareholders to be scrapped. I guess you could say they're 6 feet under. It's lame, but the choice was made so I can focus solely on making rooms. Their custom attack would have been a large undertaking, requiring lots of code. I was already behind schedule, and in hindsight, shelving them was a smart choice, as I don't think I would have finished as many rooms as I would have liked to. Do not fret, the Fathom lizards are not scrapped completely. I'm just not making them in the 1 week time frame. I think I'll pull a watcher and make Sunken Village 1.5, where I have time to actually finish their gimmicks, and other cool ideas I have for tamed Fathoms in full without stressing about the deadline. Once this video is finally released, I'll definitely start work on them, plus other region fixes, and make a small follow-up video to cover the changes. I spent day 5 completing some overdue or otherwise miscellaneous rooms, starting with IA06, another entry into the unassuming Waterworks catalogue. Next in line was IB04, an indoor room featuring both grand archways and heavy pipage. The room is not the most noteworthy thing, but for some damn reason it broke and I can't access the level editor file for it. This is especially irritating because the file broke before I could even re-render or improve upon it. So now I'm stuck with this evil cursed room, with no way of fixing my gripes with the room. Like, this square of concrete pisses me off so much. It's meant to be a pipe, but I just forgot it, so I can't improve it, so that's great. I'll likely remake the room from scratch later. And before anyone whinges that I didn't back the room up, I made frequent backups throughout the project for all rooms. This one broke before I could even make a backup for it. You can see in this render what the room would have looked like. And as for why we can't view the finished screens in game, I'll get to that later. This room's curse was not over yet. OA04 was a much nicer room to make. Situated on the opposite side of the destroyed bridge seen in the small swarm room OA01. I referenced the original room to keep the bridge proportions and structure consistent, but adding small tiling differences to keep the twin rooms distinct enough. This side of the bridge will instead have a handful of blue fruit instead of batfly, implied to be pupated by the flying fiends. I still get comments on my ecosystem ranking video that the blue fruit is batfly eggs. It keeps me up at night. As a side note, that video sucks and I want to remake it with the watcher creatures. It's at the top of my video idea pile, so you may see it soon, asterisk. IC01 is a long overdue room. It is where the players could first encounter the Fathom lizard. The lizard prefers semi-aquatic habitats, as they lack the ability to swim underwater. They'll stick to paddling or lounging at the water edge instead. IC01 was designed in a way that the player would be vulnerable to the Fathom lizard's ranged attack. This was done to make their first encounter a bit more dangerous than the typical one, thus making it more memorable. Rainworld creatures do like to leave the rooms you design for them though, so players may not even run into them anywhere near this room. OD02 was another large 2x2 outside room. Unlike the previous one, this room will have its upper screens on the surface, while its lower screens are more interior. This made editing the room slightly easier, as I could better choose how the screens overlap with one another. I've kind of learned that I don't really like making large screen rooms due to the fact they're much more complicated to build, and always seem to come out worse than lower screen count rooms. The upper section would be an outskirts-like building with a good chunk of machinery. The lower section, likewise, was inspired by Outskirts in the format of a storage basement. The room altogether needs a partial remake as I made it too similar to Outskirts, which makes it much more boring. I could do with the top screens being ruins rather than generic Outskirts stuff. The end of Friday came not with relief and satisfaction, but dread, exhaustion, a sore feeling in the mind, rotting away the passions. A cruel juxtaposition that twists joy into a viscous swamp of fatigue. I started to feel the effects of... The truth is, I could not finish OD02 today. I honestly just felt depressed making it. Now the region was 30% behind schedule, and one of the few rooms making up today's quota was effectively lost. I reached my limit. I had no sweet dreams of blossoms tonight. Opaque visions of cracking branches, scarred stumps, and the rough dirt beneath it all plagued my tumultuous mind. I was tumbled away from the sunken village's palm, inside a penitent carriage. That description was incredibly over-dramatic, but I honestly felt awful working on OD02 yesterday. The room was finished Saturday morning now that I was in a better mood. There were still 2 days left to make this region, and I wasn't going to give up now. I steeled my resolve to see this stupid region through, and made the next part of the block map. The Day 6 block map would cover the very other side of the region from the Day 1 block map, finally completing one path to escape the sunken village. The right side rooms would form a hub for players to enter from the planned right gate, before arriving at a choke point in the form of a scavenger tunnel to the left of the rooms. All of the hub screens would be in some large building housing the gate, with this structure being in a better state as it rests on the edge of the village. The block map is becoming so large that I have to take 2 screenshots to properly show the new sections, meaning the region is growing well. Starting with room making now, IA05 is a very standard interior room. I made this room in particular first as it acts as a vestibule to the adjacent rooms, not only on the block map but in the structure itself. I used prop stones to make the floor bendy here, to give the room a more ruinous feel. Vestibule is such a cool word. My ass will be using it in the future for region names if it's the last thing I do. OC02 is the much anticipated scavenger toll room. The room itself is in the same format as OB02, the unconventional 2-screener. I transplanted the geometry, tiling and proportions, making some changes and adaptations to fit the 3-screen size. Upon finishing this room, I realised that a scavenger toll is meaningless without the scavengers, so I finally decided to work on the region spawns. I should have really been adding creature spawns alongside the rooms as I made them. That would have made the region appear more lifelike in the footage, but it's not too big of a deal otherwise. The creature spawns themselves are intentionally simple. Green and pink lizards stalk the surface rooms as the main threat. A singular vulture watches from above. Under the surface is home to centipedes and the sinister fathom lizards, plus more than a dozen scavengers roaming all around the region, but primarily sticking to the toll for defense. And also wolf spiders are here too. I know they don't really fit bright regions, but their colors and design are perfect for the region. I may have to code out their photosensitivity or replace them with another creature entirely down the line. Like with any creature spawns, these spawns need heavy playtesting, in order to make sure they are the correct density, fun to play around, and most importantly interacting with the other spawns. I also baked the region's rooms as I had not done that yet. Baking is where the game calculates all the creature pathfinding into the room file itself, drastically improving the creature navigation through the region as a whole, alongside optimizing room loading times. Baking is mandatory for most regions, especially larger ones. Sadly, it's all done behind the scenes by the game, so I can't get footage of the process. Moving back to room making, OA05 was the first outdoor water room. The plan going into it was having a grey pearl placed at the water bottom so players could cross the toll from this side by paying the scavengers with the pearl. But I changed my mind later on as scavenger tolls are a large challenge to balance around. When implementing them, you don't want them to be crossed easily by having a pearl only a few rooms away, as that would be pointless. But you also don't want to give the players no way of crossing the toll without heavy backtracking. If we look closely at the base game for examples of implementation, the 4 official scavenger tolls in vanilla are utilised all in different ways. The outskirts toll acts as a huge barrier to prevent new players from entering the grueling farm arrays and straying from the intended path, as they lack the knowledge of how to cross. Next, the garbage waste tolls, with the shoreline toll being used as a tutorial for crossing tolls, with both sides of the toll room having pearls right next to it, and Iggy explaining how to cross with pictures. The Scavenger Stronghold toll is there to gate access to the optional Scavenger Stronghold, a huge weapon armory plus a couple arena unlocks. Finally, the Farm Array toll is there as a proper toll, gating an alternate path through the region with less deer riding. Sunken Villages toll operates most similarly to the outskirts one, but because I expect players to know how to cross, its main purpose is to stop players from rushing through the region in one go. If they lack the funds to cross, of course. It's kind of its own unique implementation of the Scavenger Toll, a speed bump for region exploration. I'll place 1 or 2 pearls somewhere in the main part of the region to find, but the much smaller right side is hard to properly determine if or where a pearl should be placed. First time players entering from the right side won't plan to bring a pearl, meaning they'll have to backtrack unless they want to get violent. Despite this, I decided not to include the pearl in OA05's water, or anywhere else on the right side. It would only benefit people who knew about the spawn and the toll, so players going in blind would have little chances of finding it. Trying to cross from the right side, the toll is more like a hard gate that requires players to cough up a pearl found elsewhere. There is enough food and shelter to survive a cycle or 2 on this side, and I'll make sure the gate to the right hand region is only 1 or 2 karma, so players are not stranded. My overall goal for the whole mod is to challenge players, not to be necessarily brutal or unfair, but rather pose new problems to overcome for the players who are already familiar with the game. None of the existing scavenger tolls prove that much of a roadblock for familiar players, so with this one in Sunken Village, I hope to add a tricky toll that is not so quick to break through. I can't believe a stupid pearl at the bottom of some water needed that much explaining, but I think it's worth ruminating about, as aspects like scavenger toll pearl placements are important to be careful about when making regions. OB03 was next. For this room, I returned to the original surface style of ruins. acting as a transition between the toll room and the more grand vestibule. I mentioned this earlier, but my biggest regret for the region as a whole was not having more of these ruins in the outside rooms. I will definitely add many ruins during future renovations. S03 is a shelter, which there's not much to say about. Wait, this is a perfect time. Future Balagaga is a stupid fucking idiot, fuck you. Yeah, that flashback bit from earlier was actually a flash forward. The laws of time are mine to control. At this point, the was returning, but I had determination to push onwards. I was dreading working on rooms, but I had the willpower to keep going. This combination of feelings made me take up a more functional outlook on the project. I was trying to make rooms quickly and effortlessly. It's really hard to put into words, but I felt hollow and mechanical in my creative choices, yet still possessing the determination to push forward. I was like Hunter x Hunter Gone during the palace invasion, except I was sitting on a desk, on a computer, making pixels move around, so not a great allegory. I prefaced my commentary of the next room with what my headspace was like at the time, as it resulted in the first of the deranged rooms to come out of the project. OB04 is an outdoor room depicting the rooftop of the big building housing the rightmost gate. This building is on the edge of the sunken village, so it is more intact, much like the windmill-inspired tower on the other side of the region. I wanted the rooftop to have a death pit, as there is finally a proper height to fall from. The layout is very basic, having 2 screens divided by a death pit, with a single shortcut that goes over the pit. The right side of the screen came out actually really good looking. I usually avoid the showcase gallery style of level editing where there is a heavy emphasis on layers 2 and 3, with layer 1 being very simple, but with my headspace at the time I sort of didn't care about gameplay, giving this room a really uncanny feel to me. Like, did I actually make this? This room feels like someone else broke into my home and did it. The other screen was not bad either, but could use some more structural damage and tile to be less generic. Both of the screens need better gameplay, and the whole room could be converted into a swarm room. OA06 is the room below the previous, being on the side of the building. This one should not be a death pit, to be honest. It's a nice looking room, but the gameplay sucks so much, and the whole room is too disconnected from the Sunken Village's style unintentionally. I think this error could be remedied by placing the gameplay area in a sort of cage, to stop everything that enters the room falling to its death. The last room for today is OB05, the final room connecting to the gate. The region on the other side is water-based, so I decided to include water tanks to make the transition into the new region smooth. This room came out nice, but I forgot to do a re-render, so it kind of looks bad in places. The top part of these comically bendy pillars should really go into a platform or ceiling of some kind, and also a reduction to the amount of trollers in the rightmost tank. But I guess it's a good testament to what in-progress rooms look like. Yesterday, quite a few rooms were done, but I was far from content. I really wanted to hit that 80 screen goal, despite currently being far under that count. There needed to be 20 screens made today to reach the goal. For comparison, 20 screens is a tad larger than the Looks to the Moon sub-region. The final part of the block map was charted, encompassing the underpath of the region, an alternate route through the village that also led downwards to the third gate. Due to the massive undertaking of rooms, I was forced to make them back to back. Typically when I finish a room I take a break or check out the room in-game before making small changes. But for today I had to hammer out the rooms without stopping to smell the flowers, or more like renders in this case. Obviously this was a mad choice, but I needed to do so to hit that 80 screen goal. It's crazy, I was actually dev crunching over a Rainworld mod. Let me activate my Cruncho vision so you can get a picture of what that was like. IA07 was the first room made today. It is in the same style as that vestibule room. OB06 is a semi-indoor room featuring stoneheads. IA10 is a strange industrial cupboard room. As for all of these rooms, they all take aspects of outskirts rooms. IA07 has a long ceiling pole, much like the room by Rainworld's tutorial. OB06 has the iconic stone heads, and IA10 has the overuse of shortcuts to build up that mechanical look I was going for. The Stonehead room is oddly inspired by a lecture theatre, the Stoneheads being sat upon concrete benches. Do wonder what they're learning about. Let's hope the bridge or support above doesn't collapse on top of them. Then they'll be studying archaeology practical. That was not in the script, by the way, that was unprompted. My only real issues are with IA07. The rollers could be turned down a little and the bottom tunnel can have nicer tiling. OA08 contains crazy pole platforming. IC03 consists of large turbine structures, and OA07 forms a hybrid indoor-outdoor batfly swarm room. That's a lot of buzzwords. As you could probably tell from these descriptors, I became very much so creatively bankrupt. Who knew that slopping out rooms results in the rooms becoming very simple and bland? I fell back to utilising basic industrial tiling, rather than trying to make the rooms more sunken village-y. 2 of these rooms are nice though, but all of them, plus the next lot of rooms, are starting to drift away from the core style. OA07 just looks unfinished and so generic, it pisses me off just looking at it. It's really bad. OA08 came out surprisingly good. Maybe in the remakes of some rooms, I'll do more pole-heavy geometry, as it looks cool here and fits the damage style I'm going for. IC03 is a very middle of the road room. You can tell I didn't want to make a third screen on the left, so I made it a large crawl space section instead. Okay, enough with the Crunchovision's shenanigans. I hope you understand the sheer chaos of making back-to-back rooms. IB06 is the interior to the church-like structure that was in the first 4-screener. It was marked on the block map as just a connection for a good while. I finally made good use of it and connected up the Day 7 zone to the Day 1 rooms. There were plans to present a more grandiose interior for this imposing construct earlier in production, but today I went for a smaller and standardized corridor structure instead because of time limitations. Going for a smaller scale size fits the region's vibe. In reality, whatever purpose this building served was not that significant. After all, it's being dragged under, alongside the rest of the ruins, forgotten. In a more positive light, it may house some new entities, but that's an entirely different commentary. IA08 is this little crevice, or cranny, wink wink. I wanted it to be similar to the garbage waste burrows, as they would presumably be a commonplace underneath the village's sea of rubble. This room is not great, but I do like the burrow idea for rooms, so I may bring it back in the future. On the opposite spectrum of rooms, ID01 was the final room before the third gate, being this long stretch of a grand flooded corridor. My brain was shutting off at this point. I struggled to put much effort into making the geometry, tiling, and mostly gameplay of the room at all interesting. This room has these large archways hanging above all of the screens and little of anything else. The worst part is that it looks really cool, and it works as a build-up or transition to the gate. I have to respect this room even if it was lazily made. To improve upon it, some watery plants between the archways, and maybe some fences could be added to break up the repetition. This room really puts sunken into village. The IA09 room is a strange one. If ID01 was my brain shutting off, the next rooms are my life flashing before my eyes. What is going on with this room? I have no clue looking back at the time-lapse. Similar to the previous, the room looks fine, but doesn't have any gameplay. Unlike ID01, it has no excuse to be lacking the fun gameplay this time. IB07 was regrettably next. I don't even know what to say, it just exists. It's the room of all time, a very whelming room. Gratulation? The left side is made out of really bland pipe tiling and the right side contains a trash pit. In a vacuum, the room would just be bad to maybe decent, but it's simply not a room that fits the region well. Following the style is very important for this room in particular, since it is the first non-transition sunken village room came across if the player enters from the bottom gate. As such, first impressions imperatively must be adequate. Finally, IA11 is the last room made. It connects the third gate to the large water corridor. Comparable to ID01, it acts as a transition room towards the region on the other gate side, so it doesn't need to follow this particular region style too closely. That being said, I enjoy the scary bottomless trash pit, having a singular small pipe over it conveying how unstable the ground here is. I should add more cracks and instability to the water corridor ceiling to further reinforce this point. And with that, the 1 week region is bonus room time! Okay, actually I made one more room today. The Scavenger Trader Room IA12. Akin to the previous rooms, this one is simply industrial style slot without following the region theme close enough. They call me Bala GPT the way we mash out uncreative rehashed rooms. The Rainworld region was not just a challenge, it's an expression of creative concepts. A silly fact about this room is that it is really hard to get to. It connects to the top of the Stonehead lecture room. However, the upper bit of the room is impossible to reach by normal means for a slugcat. Scavenger squads can use transport pipes in the trader room to reach the top of OB06. The trader room was added for scavs in mind as a transportation point in the region, not necessarily accommodating for player access. Okay, time to address the elephant in the room. Or should I say the python in the room. I almost forgot to bring up pythons throughout the whole video script. They are a brand new weapon found in the brand new regions. I had nowhere to properly mention them anywhere else in the video, so there is just a bunch of footage throughout the whole thing with these little items in lacking any context. I'll elaborate on them here now as a treat for sticking through all the room making. They are a one-handed knife weapon that can be used in vicious close combat or as a way to climb up walls and surfaces. I made them a couple months before the challenge week, and they are inspired by the pythons and auto pythons from White Knuckle. The reason why I added them in the first place requires a bit of a side tangent. I removed the ability to pull out stuck normal spears from surfaces, including if the remix option is turned on. The nerf is exclusive to the new campaign and won't affect any other slugcats, so please don't whine at me in the comments, it's only for my campaign, and so the change doesn't need to affect any others. I decided to nerf this feature as it's simply overpowered. It removes the punishment for missing spears, making combat much more easy and less skillful. The campaign is tailored towards more experienced players, so that's why I went through with the nerf in the first place. Flat out overriding the remix option is always a sketchy idea. It shoots player choice in the foot. So to remedy that, I coded an alternative to spears that have been given the ability to always be pulled out of walls. Enter the python, or python, I don't even know how you pronounce it.
Python.
Okay, that can't be right.
Python.
That's even worse, what the fuck?
Python. Python.
Okay, I trust this guy, it's Python. Everyone else is a fraud. Pythons are much different weapons from spears. I won't spoil all of their new mechanics right now. Scavengers do seem to favour them as they are not only a nifty weapon but may have other uses too. They are commonly witnessed carrying reinforced pythons with yellow cloth attached. For some trivia, the pythons have a bit of yellow paint on them, as otherwise they are actually impossible to spot on the ground. This colour could be changed in the future. As stated before, these were inspired by White Knuckle, the awesome climbing game that was actually in turn inspired by Vanilla Rainworld. The Ouroboros of inspiration is complete with migrate pythons. There has also been a second gameplay mechanic that I haven't mentioned in all of the footage, but it's still work in progress and I forgot to remove it, so I'll leave it a mystery for now. See if you can spot it in the footage, it comes up quite a lot. With one final room in the python talk, I was done with the region. I retired to my bed chamber and snuffed out the bedside candle, embracing the absolute darkness. The week was finally over. I managed to hit the 80 screen goal and finish all the rooms on the block map. At that point I became fully burned out. Even thinking about making any more rooms made me feel sick, no exaggeration. I believe I achieved all three principles determined before the week. Sunken Village is insignificant, small and optional. The region did drift away from the Sunken Village's whole village theme, but I did foresee that would happen all the way back when creating the concept, and I think the region gained its own solid visual identity in wake of the sinking of the village theme. Now for the final question, did I really make a region in a week? Yes, with an asterisk, a big asterisk, and possibly a question mark too. The rooms and spawns of the region were complete, yet I did not do much dev tool or sound work for most of the rooms. Dev tool objects and settings are mostly for aesthetic reasons, and because of that I prioritized room making. Dev tools are crucial in a complete region, most modders would say. Leaving lots of the dev tool cosmetic applications unfinished is not ideal. The region now lacks music and art. I am no artist nor musician, so I'll need to get help on those later in the future. Sunken Village does require solid playtesting and balancing. That is another thing I need external help for, since the creator has bias. The region has all of its skeleton and muscle, it just needs skin to go gold, so to speak. Even as all the rooms are done, I am not satisfied with a good few of them. As you have likely picked up on, many of the room commentaries mention how I would rework or remaster the rooms at a later date. I definitely want to do that, alongside the full implementation of the Fathom lizards after they were killed off screen. There needs to be a follow-up video sometime in the future covering an update that includes both of these additions, plus the full dev tooling of the region, and potentially unlocks and arenas too if I can be bothered. We are taking a leaf out of Watcher's book for this so-called update, but I do think that if I tried to do any of this during the week I would have broke. I was already operating at my creative limit. I'll decide the region's proper name by then too. It really comes down to your judgment, viewer, yeah you, whether I really made the region in a week. The whole region is playable but lacks polish and the quality I wanted out of particular rooms. Does that honestly count for a finished region? I will strongly recommend against making a region in 1 week yourself. It is not worth it. Sure, I got a small region's worth of rooms done, but I became so burned out I could not work on any other rooms for a whole month. Plus the quality of the rooms themselves took a hit when trying to rush them out. You should really think about what you want out of rooms creatively instead of just slopping them out like I did towards the end of the week. Burning out your very passion is never worth the deceptive boon of advancement, if you wanted a pretentious moral out of this project. A few days after the region week, I was working on small features for an unrelated part of the mod when I noticed Sunken Village was broken and I could not access it. Turns out the baking I did for the region had errors in it, causing a few rooms to become fully broken. To fix this, I simply needed to export the text file in the level editor and rebake them. So why am I bringing this up now? If you recall, XXIB04's level editor file was broken, and unfortunately the in-game room also broke down through this baking error, effectively destroying the only surviving render I had of the room, resulting in IB04 becoming lost medias. That's why I could not get footage of the complete room in the day 5 segment. Well, it turns out that in some unrelated footage of me testing the creature spawns, I visit IB04, so it's found medias. The actual room is gone now though, but at least you could admire the room in its mediocre glory. Before I conclude, I want to mention the full mod project. I have been tight-lipped about the details throughout the video, primarily because people should not get too hyped in case I'm not able to finish it, or at worst publicly release anything. The project at the moment is in very early development, even lacking a concrete name. The full goal is to bring a new campaign to the game, centered around this brown slug cat with yellow eyes, called the Mudlark. It takes place in a brand new province on the Rainworld landmass. There are no physical connections between the vanilla or DLC worlds, and iterators are absent here for one reason or another, but it seems brand new figures and entities are usurping their place. Ooh. I don't know how much new content should be in the mod with scope creep in mind. At full scope it's much bigger than the vanilla campaign, featuring new gameplay mechanics, new creatures and variants, new items, and of course, new regions. I beg you, please don't get your hopes up yet though. Rainworld mod projects are very prone to dying, or development massively slowing down from losing momentum. I have personally been afflicted with the burnout curse, with Rainworld RPG and many other such projects. It is currently just me working alone on the project for this reason. I don't want people's work to be wasted on the project that may never be released. I think I'll try and get more people on board once I'm confident the project won't die. I've been working on it for over a year, loosely making regions and code stuff without a solid plan, but at the start of 2026 I reworked all my overall plans for the project, so lots of the work beforehand has become dislodged in my new current plans. Despite that, I'm much more confident in my new plan. Most of the content I previously made will likely come back, except for the original XX Rainforest region, that is dead and buried. On a more positive note, I have so many awesome ideas and concepts that I want to realise in the mod. My overall goal for the project is to personally have fun making it, and bring something truly unique to Rainworld. This very video and experiment was a part of that. The true reason I decided to go forward with the concept of this video was out of passion for making regions. I wanted to accomplish making one within a restrictive time limitation, much like Lost Cranny. I don't regret making Sunken Village in the week at all, even if this video took 3 damn months to make. My burnout was gone after about a month, and now after scripting, recording and editing the video over the course of the other 2 months, I'm finally free, roaring to jump back into Rainworld mod development. I'll try to make more frequent videos about the project and general Rainworld, but no promises. It is funny that the video itself took much longer to make than the region. The irony is not lost on me, especially for such a region strategically designed to be insignificant and missable. I guess you can say this video, this casual experiment, is my art. At least Sunken Village is better than Aether Ridge, am I right? Oh, come on.